Do you know someone who ruined their life in just a matter of minutes? If so, how did they do it? Story 1 guy I went to high school with was kicked out of his college ROTC and moved back home. After some time of living at home, his dad walked into his bedroom and went off about him being a lazy ass and needing to do something with his life. He decided he was going to take his gun and rob a bank. Supposedly, the gun wasn't loaded, but he did successfully rob the bank and get away. Some time went by, he moved out of his parents' house and started living it up. He eventually told someone he trusted. That person turned him in. He was arrested and charged. He got a count for every person who was in the bank because he had a gun. You can decide if he ruined his life when he decided to rob the bank or when he decided to tell someone that he did it. Story 2. Some guy tried to come into my nightclub when he was clearly too drunk. I made the call to not let him in, so he starts shouting at me and tries to aggressively walk up to me. I put my hands up in defense and he's pushing back against me. Then the dude lunged at my boss next to me, so my boss shoves him. The guy tumbles backwards and slams the back of his head on a curb, paralyzed from the neck down forever. Tried to take my boss to court for $15 million, but the camera showed this guy instigating everything. Story 3. Guy I went to high school with was at a bar. Spoke to a girl at the bar. She said she had a boyfriend. He said okay and left it alone. Boyfriend was not impressed. Waited for him to go out for a smoke and sucker punched him, fell, hit his head, and died. So pointless. Story 4, third-hand story from a former coworker, one of the other Marines at the base where he was stationed in the 90s, stole plastic explosives from the test range and tried to sell them at a bar that was literally line of sight from the base. The first person to show any interest was an NCIS officer. That guy might still be in Leavenworth. Story 5. Local police chief did a hit and run over the weekend on a parked, unattended vehicle in his department vehicle. By the end of the day Tuesday, he was resigning. State police investigated and issued a bunch of summary offense citations. DUI was not among the charges. No one was hurt, and the guy resigned, but, there's only one reason you drive away from hitting something after midnight. Story 6. He was going to be the one to put our dinky little private school on the map by going to the NFL as a kicker. He fell off a picnic table that was being pulled behind a pickup truck at a party, pasture surfing. By the time I saw him again a year later, he could almost feed himself without assistance. Story 7. When I was in my early 20s, I worked as an energy worker in field service. One of my really close friends was someone who I was on calls with regularly. A project lead pressured both of us to work on equipment we weren't qualified or trained to work on, and we unfortunately relented. We were halfway done with the task, and I walked out to the truck to grab water bottles. Halfway to the truck, I hear a giant buzz, then a huge bang, then screaming. By the time I get back to the generator room, he's fully on fire. The cabinet had arc blasted, and he had been right in the way. By the time I got our fire blanket from the truck, he was basically fully engulfed. I was able to put him out and get him into as much of a recovery position as I could, and then I called our shop to get them to organize rescue to our location. He somehow survived 80 to 90% second and third degree burns, but coded so many times he ended up with severe brain damage from oxygen deprivation. He lost his eyes, his sense of smell and taste, and much of his sense of touch. I think he lost his hearing too from the noise of it too. He's in a vegetative state in a full-time care facility now. I had frequent nightmares for years about it. The thing that stuck with me the most was, since the arc blast had hit him basically right in the face, it basically boiled his skin off. I ran in and saw him ripping large pieces of his face off while he tried to bat the flames off. The smell and sight of that never goes away. Story 8. My brother, he had 5 kids and a wife and some rage issues. About 25 years ago, he was at his son's soccer game and one of the other dads struck up a conversation about soccer with my brother's wife. My brother fucking lost his mind. He punched that guy, grabbed his wife by the hair, and dragged her to his truck. Several witnesses testified about this later. Once they were home, he entered the kitchen, shoved his wife up against the fridge, and strangled her to death. The kids testified to this. He then loaded the kids into his truck, grabbed his rifle, and headed toward the city where his plan was to kill me, our father, his kids, and then himself, to spare them all from the shame. Thankfully, he had threatened this many times to many people. Traffic was shit that day, and he was intercepted by police. He served 20-plus years of his sentence. I testified twice at his parole hearings, trying to prevent him from getting out because I knew what he was and always would be. He was eventually released but died 2 days later in a car accident. Story 9. childhood friend thought his wife was cheating on him with one of her coworkers. So he goes to the guy's house, waits for him to get off work, and jumps on him with a metal bar, left him laying with permanent brain damage, drove down to some old abandoned buildings by the docks, and ended it. They had a kid and another on the way. Story 10. A neighbor, his wife, and his friend and friend's wife were at the neighbor's house. The two men both got into arguments with their wives and decided to go out drinking down the street. A few hours later, I'm woken up by my sister banging on my bedroom door. I was staying with them at the time because a car crashed doing probably 80 in a 25 miles per hour zone right next to our home. I jumped out of bed and got outside to see the neighbor's car crashed into a tree and two men trapped inside. The tree the car hit stopped them from ramming into another neighbor's house, and they hit it so hard, the battery was in the street after ours. Their car caught fire and we had to watch them burn to death. Still see it and smell it every now and then when trying to sleep. I had never met the wife, so I had no idea who she was when she came up and asked me what happened, so I said some guy crashed his car. She took off running after she recognized the car. Can't believe I told her that her husband died so bluntly. Story 11. I had a friend who got into his car drunk with 5 other people, flipped the car, and killed one of the passengers. He went from being this charming, good-looking, likable guy to a shut-in and was seen as a monster to a lot of people in the community. He ended up committing suicide about a year after the accident. He was seriously broken about what had happened. Story 12. That Aussie kid who, on a dare, ate a slug that had a parasite, developed a gnarly brain infection, ended up in a coma for a year, woke up paralyzed, then passed away in 2018. He was only 19 when it happened. Story 13. Security company. This happened before I worked there, but some coworkers told me the story. Guy was doing well at his job. Got lots of promotions, on his way to lieutenant, but was too into his job and got a police scanner that he would listen to. One day, just as he was getting off work, a high-speed chase went by. He hopped in his personal vehicle with his firearm, got to the front of the chase, blocked the suspect in, and pulled his gun. Suddenly, the cops were much more interested in the crazy guy with a gun. Got hit with several felony charges. Story 14. Pretty successful woman at a company I worked for got drunk, took an Uber home from a party, realized she left the keys to her apartment behind, so she decided to climb up to her second-story balcony to get her spare set. She slipped, paralyzed herself, couldn't work for a year, racked up ridiculous medical debt, and the pandemic left her position useless, so she was let go. Story 15. A guy I know robbed a bank with a note saying something along the lines of, "Put the money in the bag," was released on bond within a few weeks. Went back to the same bank with another note and robbed it again. I think he got 35 years. Multiple instances comprised of multiple minutes each, but yeah. Story 16. The man that killed my grandfather had never so much as had a speeding ticket. He was married with kids and fell behind on rent. My grandfather that was in his 80s worked for the company that rented this guy his home for extra money. Grandpa couldn't reach him about his rent, so went and did a welfare check. The guy panicked and murdered my grandfather, destroyed more than one life in a matter of 30 seconds. Story 17. The 17-year-old girl that was driving 105 miles per hour down a dark desert road at 6:35 a.m. Next week will have been 3 years since it happened. She hit me, head on, and that was it for her. I drive past her memorial on the side of the road every day, and I think about how someone with so much ahead of them could lose everything due to one bad decision. I lost my teeth that day, but she lost a whole lot more. I hope her family is doing well. This is probably a tough time for them. Story 18. Kid I went to high school with wasn't going to graduate and decided to protest by speeding and doing wheelies on the road in front of the school. On his third round, he passes a pickup truck, hooks his leg on the bumper, and is thrown from the bike right on his head, snapping his neck. School posthumously graduated him, edited to help clear up questions. Happened in 1995 on the northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin border. I noticed his intelligence has been questioned. Let me share an additional anecdote. His nickname was Bob. When asked what it was backwards, he replied without guile or irony that it was oob. Whether you agree with the school's action in graduating him or not, locally it was considered window dressing as the whole town knew of what happened within hours of his accident. Story 19. My dear friend and ex, who I met back in high school, worked for the Conservation Corps and loved it. He had such a passion for the natural environment and had recently been accepted into university to pursue a degree related to environmental sciences in the fall. One day in May of 2023, he was out in the field on a four-wheeler doing his job, and he was traversing an incline. He somehow lost control and the four-wheeler flipped and crushed him. He was 26. I remember him fondly and often, and I hope he didn't suffer.